So here we have another cubic inequality. So we're being asked to solve x cubed is greater than or equal to 5x. And immediately you should be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not used to them looking like this. I'm used to seeing a 0 on this side. So what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is try to turn it into something we're used to seeing. So let me subtract 5x from this side, which means I'll have to subtract 5x from this side. And now let's rewrite what it's going to be. So it's going to be x cubed minus 5x is greater than or equal to 0. So this is far more familiar to us. And there's one more thing I would want to do here, and that is take out my common factor of x, which means I'm going to be left with x squared minus 5 is greater than or equal to 0. Now, this is very familiar to what we've seen. It is a little bit different, but very familiar. So what I'm going to do now is kind of translate this into plain English so we can understand what we're dealing with. So what this is saying is, when is the function, this right here, above or touching the x-axis? And that's because I've got this greater than or equal to 0 here. So with this information now, I will be able to draw my graph and come to my answer, what my conclusion is. So to draw my graph, I'm going to have to find my x-intercepts. So let's do that now. To find my x-intercepts, I use my null factor theorem, which says I set each of these equal to 0. So I'm going to set x equal to 0. So that means I'm going to get x is equal to 0, which means that's one of my x-intercepts. Then I'm going to set x squared minus 5 equal to 0 and then solve for my x-intercepts. So I'm going to do that, which is going to turn into this, which is going to turn into plus or minus the square root of 5. So those are my two x-intercepts, or 3 rather. I've got that one, and then I've got 2 here. I've got 3 x-intercepts. Let me now put that information on my graph. So I'm going to have one x-intercept there at 0. I'm going to have another one over here at negative the square root of 5. And then I'm going to have another one here at the square root of 5. Now I need to graph it, but we need to ask the question of whether or not it's going to look like this, or is it going to look like this? These are like this. The way that we determine this is by looking at the sign in front of our x cubed. So we don't need to do all that thinking about what it's going to look like if it's expanded. It's already expanded for us, and we can clearly see that this is a positive x squared. So that means I'm going to look like this. Ready? I'm going to go up, I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go up again. I can try that again to make it a bit neater, but again, my graph isn't my answer, so it doesn't need to look that great. This is just us being pedantic now. Okay, that's good enough. Let us now put in some arrows. Okay, so now what we can do is consider this question. When is the function above or touching the x-axis? So let me get my highlighter and just highlight where that happens. So it's above my x-axis here, all the way here. And it's above my x-axis over here as well. I can then, because it's above or touching, let me just put in some filled in circles there to remind me that these points are also included. Having done this sketch now, I can now answer my question. So if I was to write my answer as an inequality, it is going to be the following. It's going to be negative the square root of 5 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 0, or x is greater than or equal to the square root of 5. So that would be my answer there. So it's between negative 5 and 0, or it's between, or it's x is greater than the square root of 5. The next thing I would do, if I could also write this in interval notation, both of these would be correct answers. So let me now write it in interval notation. I would write it like this: negative the square root of 5, 0, square union, square bracket, square root of 5 to infinity. And just like that, there are 2 different ways of writing down my answer. Hopefully you found this video useful as I draw my squares. There we go. We're all done. So a little bit different, but we put in a form that's more familiar to us. Same process. There's our answers. Hopefully this was helpful. I'll see you in the next video.